The Alaskan wilderness stretched endlessly under a pale winter sun, silent yet foreboding. The narrator described how centuries of legends spoke of vanishing hunters, lost planes, and unseen forces lurking in the remote land. Daniel said, "These disappearances cannot just be accidents." His breath frosted in the icy air as he stared into the horizon, his mind consumed with both fear and fascination. Sarah said, "Daniel, people vanish because Alaska is unforgiving, not because of mysteries." Her words carried caution, but her tone betrayed curiosity. The camera lingered on Daniel's determined eyes, hardened by obsession, while Sarah's uneasy stance revealed hesitation. The harsh wind moaned across the tundra like an ominous warning, as though the land itself disapproved of their quest. Legends of native folklore whispered of strange lights and beings beyond comprehension. Daniel's obsession pulled him forward, Sarah's doubt tried to anchor him, but both were drawn into the Alaskan Triangle, a place where logic and fear clashed. Their journey began here, with silence heavier than snow, and a mystery demanding answers. The narrator recalled how the Alaskan Triangle spanned from Anchorage to Juneau, stretching into endless wilderness. Pilots vanished midair, leaving no wreckage, no distress calls, just silence. Daniel said, "It's too precise to be coincidence." Sarah said, "Or it's too brutal to leave survivors." Their words clashed like ice breaking over a frozen river. The mystery deepened as they trekked forward, aware each step led them closer to danger. Daniel's obsession turned into momentum, while Sarah's doubt remained heavy like an anchor chained to her chest. Yet both pressed on, compelled by the enigma of the Alaskan Triangle. Stories from locals carried dread, passed down like warnings carved into memory. Native hunters whispered of lights in the sky and shapes that watched from the forest. Daniel said, "Legends hide fragments of truth." Sarah said, "Are there tales to keep us away?" Yet even she could not ignore how silence pressed down like an unseen hand, heavy and unnatural. Each mile further into the Alaskan Triangle felt like stepping into a world where reason unraveled. Night fell quickly, swallowing the land in a shroud of shadow. Their campfire flickered against towering trees, sparks rising like restless spirits. Daniel said, "We'll uncover what hides here, even if it consumes us." Sarah said, "You don't know what you're calling toward." The fire's crackle became their only comfort against the suffocating dark. Beyond the light, the forest pulsed with silence too sharp to ignore, as though unseen eyes watched every flicker of flame. The night deepened, stars glimmering faintly above, but the forest felt alive with unseen motion. Sarah whispered, "Something's out there." Daniel gripped his compass tightly, its needle twitching unnaturally as though reacting to forces unseen. The narrator spoke of countless explorers who had vanished under such skies, never to be found. In that moment, both Daniel and Sarah understood. The Alaskan Triangle was no myth. It was a presence, vast and unrelenting, and they had just stepped into its domain. The morning broke with gray clouds spreading across the Alaskan sky, heavy and oppressive. Daniel and Sarah pressed forward into deeper wilderness, their breaths forming pale ghosts in the air. The narrator explained how explorers before them had vanished on such mornings, leaving only whispers of broken radios and silent trails. Daniel said, "Every mile takes us closer to the truth." Sarah said, "Or closer to becoming another story told around campfires." Their boots crunched against frozen ground, the forest thickening around them, each tree like a sentinel guarding secrets. An eerie hush settled, broken only by wind threading through branches. Sarah's doubt tugged at her steps, but Daniel's eyes carried relentless fire, refusing to turn back. He believed answers waited within the shadows of the Alaskan Triangle, answers history refused to record. The journey's weight grew heavier, silence pressing down like a living force. They knew they were no longer walking into wilderness alone, but into a place where the line between reality and myth blurred with every step. The narrator described how planes vanished mid-flight, pilots leaving cryptic last words before silence. Daniel said, "Those disappearances aren't random, there's a pattern." Sarah frowned, saying, "Patterns don't explain vanished bodies or missing wreckage." Anawa. They stopped at a ridge, gazing into the valley where mist clung thick as smoke. Daniel's hand tightened around his compass, the needle twitching as if disturbed. The valley stretched wide, but emptiness carried dread. Sarah's eyes lingered on the fog, her unease growing. Daniel believed truth lingered in hidden spaces, while Sarah feared the valley devoured all who entered. Legends whispered of lights and forces unseen, pulling travelers into voids. The silence of the place was suffocating, unnatural in its depth. Each sound seemed swallowed whole, leaving them standing on the edge of uncertainty. Daniel pressed forward, convinced the valley hid answers. Sarah followed, though her heart beat with the weight of countless warnings etched into the land. They descended into the valley, mist wrapping around them like a living shroud. The narrator spoke of hunters who had wandered these paths and never returned. Daniel said, "If there's an explanation, it begins here." Sarah muttered, "Or ends here." The fog blurred their steps, each sound muffled, each shadow stretched unnaturally. The trees leaned inward, as if the forest itself closed upon them. Daniel's eyes scanned every detail, searching for traces of what had come before. Sarah's nerves grew tight, her breath catching with every rustle. The valley carried an unshakable weight, pressing down on their bodies as though unseen eyes tracked their every move. It was a place where stories became warnings and warnings became truth. The deeper they moved, the more they felt the valley was not empty but waiting, patient and ancient. And somewhere within, it seemed something watched, silent and unseen. By midday they reached a clearing where silence pressed heavier than the fog itself. The narrator recalled reports of strange lights, seen above this very valley decades earlier. Daniel said, "This is where they vanished. We stand at their last known steps." Sarah whispered, "And maybe ours too if we stay too long." The clearing stretched wide, ground coated with frost, that glittered faintly in the pale light. Daniel scanned the horizon, searching for signs of wreckage or camp remnants. The land offered nothing but stillness, as if guarding its truths beneath ice and earth. Sarah shifted uneasily, her breath ragged, her eyes restless. Daniel's resolve only hardened. The weight of silence convinced him more than words ever could. To him, the absence of evidence was not emptiness, but proof that something greater lay buried here, unseen yet undeniable. The narrator described how silence became a presence of its own, heavy and unnatural. Daniel held his compass out, the needle spinning wildly, as though the earth itself shifted. He said, "This is the core of it. Something interferes here." Sarah shook her head, her voice trembling. "Or something hunts here." The fog thickened again, curling like hands reaching upward. Daniel felt exhilaration, his obsession ignited by the anomaly. Sarah's fear grew sharp, her instincts warning to flee. Together they stood in the clearing, two figures caught between determination and dread. The Alaskan triangle stretched around them, vast and unknowable, pressing its mystery upon their bodies like a weight. In that instant, they both realized they were no longer searching for the mystery, but standing in its center, swallowed whole. The valley gave way to dense woods where silence clung like a shroud. The narrator revealed how others had spoken of guides who appeared uninvited, leading travelers deeper into mystery. Daniel said, "Someone knows these paths better than we ever will." Sarah whispered, "And why would anyone want to guide us further?" As twilight bled through the branches, a shadowed figure emerged, cloaked and unmoving. The air thickened, tension crackling like ice under strain. The figure's voice was low, cryptic, warning of dangers beyond comprehension. Daniel's eyes burned with curiosity, Sarah's widened with dread. They stood face to face with the informant, whose words promised knowledge yet carried the weight of menace. In that encounter, truth felt closer, but so did peril. The land itself seemed to lean in, waiting to hear what would be spoken. The path forward was no longer theirs alone, but one shared with a stranger bound by secrets. The informant's eyes gleamed in the half-light as he spoke of patterns carved into the land, places where compasses spun, and radios failed. He said, "This place swallows those who seek answers too boldly." Daniel asked sharply, "Then why speak to us?" The informant replied, "Because some truths demand witnesses, even at the cost of lives." Sarah shivered, clutching her coat tighter, her heart racing with unease. The narrator explained how cryptic warnings often preceded greater discoveries, though few survived to tell them. Daniel felt emboldened, his obsession fanned into flame by each word. Sarah, however, grew more certain they were sinking into something neither could escape. The forest seemed to press closer, branches heavy with frost, shadows gathering like listening ears. The moment felt carved in fate, a path chosen yet irrevocable. The informant led them deeper, pointing toward markings etched on stone, remnants of stories buried by time. Daniel studied them eagerly, his fingers brushing ancient carvings. He said, "This is proof. Someone documented the anomalies." Sarah whispered, "Or someone warned us to stay away." The informant's words remained few, leaving riddles instead of answers. The narrator explained that the Alaskan Triangle was more than land. It was an archive of mysteries guarded by silence. Daniel's excitement blinded him to caution, while Sarah's fear sharpened with every step. The carvings glowed faintly under lantern light, etched symbols that hinted at movements of stars, maps of energy unseen. In their stillness, the forest breathed with hidden power, as though acknowledging the trespass. Secrets pressed in around them, and trust became a fragile thread between the three. As night deepened, firelight cast uneven shadows across their makeshift camp. The informant sat silently, his gaze lost in flames, while Daniel pressed with questions. Daniel said, "You've seen what we're chasing, haven't you?" The informant replied, "I've seen enough to know answers bring ruin." Sarah added, "Then why lead us here?" His silence was answer enough. The narrator revealed how trust fractured under weight of hidden motives, allies often disguising threats. Daniel's determination hardened, refusing to retreat despite the warning. Sarah's unease became sharper, suspicion gnawing at her resolve. The fire cracked, sparks rising like spirits fleeing into the night sky. Shadows moved restlessly beyond the glow, as though the forest leaned closer, eavesdropping on secrets not meant for human ears. The narrator spoke of betrayal woven into every legend, and Sarah began to feel its threads tightening here. Daniel remained blind to caution, eyes locked on the informant's every word. The informant said, "There is a truth even greater than you seek, but you must survive to face it." Sarah said sharply, "Or is survival the trap itself?" Doubt crept between them, suspicion clouding the fragile bond. The forest moaned with shifting wind, echoing her fears. Daniel refused to waver, his mind tethered only to pursuit. Sarah's heart raced, sensing a deception ready to unravel. Their journey, once theirs alone, was now entangled in a stranger's shadow. The triangle loomed around them, vast, merciless and alive with silent watchers. Whatever truth awaited was no longer discovery but confrontation. The narrator explained how legends spoke of tragedies that bound families to the Alaskan Triangle, their sorrow etched into the land. Daniel pressed forward, determined to find more than rumors. Sarah whispered, "This place feeds on grief." In the distance, they discovered a weathered cabin, half buried in snow, its timbers groaning with age. Daniel said, "Someone lived here once, someone tied to all this." Sarah's hesitation deepened, the weight of stories pressing on her chest. The cabin stood like a relic of despair, a monument to lives broken. Inside, faint traces of belongings whispered of abandonment. The silence here was heavier than the forest, carrying sorrow that clung to every surface. Daniel's eyes burned with curiosity, Sarah's with unease. Their steps crossed a threshold into memory, where pain and loss lingered still. Inside the cabin, the air was stale, heavy with dust and sorrow. The narrator spoke of families who vanished here, leaving behind only fragments of their lives. Daniel whispered, "Every object is a piece of the story." Sarah said softly, "Or a reminder no one escaped." A broken chair lay overturned, a lantern rusted, photographs faded into obscurity. The atmosphere carried a haunting stillness, as if the walls themselves remembered grief. Daniel searched with methodical focus, each item fuel for his relentless drive. Sarah recoiled at the weight of sadness pressing from every shadow. This cabin was not just shelter. It was a grave of memories, a silent witness to loss. Their discovery tied them closer to the tragedies of the past, reminding them that the Alaskan Triangle was not an empty legend, but a place of broken lives and unanswered cries. Daniel found a journal hidden beneath warped floorboards, its pages yellowed with age, ink faded, but words legible. The narrator revealed how survivors often left fragments of stories that never reached the world. Daniel read aloud, voices in the night, lights above the trees, and then silence. Sarah's voice trembled. They knew something was coming. The weight of tragedy thickened in the cabin, the journal's words echoing into the present. Daniel's determination deepened, convinced the entries proved forces beyond explanation. Sarah's unease grew sharper, dread curling around every thought. The cabin became more than ruin. It was a vault of memory, its secrets laid bare. Their discovery connected them to the tragedies that defined the triangle, proving that loss was its most constant companion. The narrator spoke of grief, passed from generation to generation, tying bloodlines to the land's silence. Daniel said, "This journal is proof. They witnessed the same anomalies we chase." Sarah said, "And it destroyed them." The cabin's walls creaked as wind pressed through cracks, sounding like distant voices. Daniel's obsession sharpened into near certainty, every word in the journal fueling his pursuit. Sarah's instinct screamed retreat, her heart heavy with sorrow not her own. They stood in the cabin surrounded by remnants of lives, shattered, each relic echoing despair. The place demanded acknowledgement, its silence suffocating. For Sarah, it was a warning. For Daniel, a revelation. Their bond frayed further, torn between his drive for answers and her growing fear that loss was the only truth waiting here. The narrator described how tragedy shaped the very identity of the triangle, a wound carried by the land itself. Daniel said, "Their suffering is the key. Something here connects them all." Sarah shook her head, her voice taut. "Suffering isn't a key, it's a warning." Outside, the wind howled, pressing snow against the cabin walls like a shroud. The air vibrated with weight, as though sorrow itself had formed. Daniel's resolve only grew. He believed tragedy was a pattern pointing him closer to truth. Sarah's dread deepened, her heart heavy with unspoken fear. Together, they carried the burden of lives long lost, unknowingly stepping into the same chain of grief. The land was no passive stage but a presence, binding them to its endless cycle. The Alaskan Triangle demanded more than curiosity, it demanded sacrifice. The narrator described how trust in the wilderness could unravel faster than snow, melting under fire. Daniel clutched the journal as if it held salvation, but Sarah's suspicion turned toward the informant. She whispered, "He's leading us deeper, not guiding us out." Daniel argued, "He carries knowledge no one else dares reveal." The informant remained silent, his eyes shadowed, his presence heavy with secrets. The fire flickered between them, sparks lifting into the dark, marking the divide forming in their fragile alliance. Sarah's unease sharpened, sensing betrayal weaving itself into every word left unsaid. Daniel pressed forward, his hunger for truth stronger than any doubt. Yet betrayal's shadow loomed close, inevitable as the storm brewing above. Their fragile trust cracked, and silence turned into suspicion echoing through the night. The next morning brought heavy snowfall, the forest buried in silence. Sarah confronted Daniel, her voice sharp. "You trust him too much." Daniel snapped, "You're blinded by fear, not reason." The informant lingered at a distance, pretending indifference while tension poisoned the air. The narrator explained how betrayal grew in silence, unseen until its weight collapsed everything. Sarah's breath clouded as she turned away, her trust in Daniel fraying. Daniel's focus only hardened, his resolve welded to the path the informant revealed. The snow pressed down, muffling every sound as if the land conspired to conceal their discord. Between them, loyalty splintered, suspicion grew, and the wilderness became the stage for treachery waiting to strike. The narrator revealed how betrayal rarely arrived in thunder, but crept quietly like frost spreading across glass. Sarah noticed signs in the informant's guidance, trails looping, directions repeating. She said, "He's keeping us lost." Daniel countered, "Or circling toward something hidden." Sarah's patience snapped, her voice edged with anger. "You see obsession as guidance, but I see deception." The informant's lips curled in the faintest smirk, vanishing quickly into shadow. Daniel's faith clashed with Sarah's growing certainty, leaving the air thick with unspoken accusations. The forest loomed closer, branches sagging heavy with ice, as though listening. In the silence, betrayal's shape became clear, yet Daniel's eyes refused to accept what Sarah already knew. The tension broke when the informant vanished briefly, leaving Daniel and Sarah alone. The narrator described how trust collapsed in isolation. Sarah said, "He's playing us, Daniel, can't you see?" Daniel clenched his fists, replying, "I see only the truth he leads us to." Their voices clashed against the silence, sharp as breaking ice. When the informant reappeared, his cloak dusted in snow, his eyes avoided theirs. Sarah's suspicion burned hotter, Daniel's loyalty deeper. The fracture widened, setting the stage for inevitable betrayal. The wilderness swallowed their voices, leaving only footsteps and breath, echoing in the cold. Trust had already fractured beyond repair. The narrator spoke of betrayal as a knife that cuts deepest when it comes from within. Sarah caught the informant whispering to himself, words too low to hear but heavy with intent. She said, "He's not with us, Daniel. He's against us." Daniel's reply cracked with anger, "Enough. Without him we have nothing." The informant finally met her eyes, his stare cold and unflinching, as if her suspicion amused him. The weight of deceit filled the air, pressing harder than the snow. Sarah's chest tightened, knowing the betrayal would soon break into the open. Daniel's refusal to see left them vulnerable, blind to the danger standing beside them. The forest seemed to close tighter, its silence echoing the inevitable. Trust was gone, and betrayal was already upon them. The narrator explained how truths revealed themselves only when darkness stripped away illusions. Daniel pressed deeper into the wilderness, his obsession flaring like fire against the snow. Sarah whispered, "This is no longer about discovery, it's about survival." Yet Daniel's resolve refused to bend, his grip on the journal and compass iron tight. The informant's presence grew more sinister, his silence louder than words. Snow fell thicker, burying the trail, the forest groaning with ancient weight. Daniel said, "We are close, I feel it in every step." Sarah snapped, "Close to what, Daniel? To vanishing like the others?" Their voices clashed, swallowed by the storm. The land itself seemed to conspire, leading them toward confrontation with secrets too heavy for human hands. The storm eased, revealing jagged peaks looming like guardians over the valley. The narrator spoke of how the triangle devoured intruders yet revealed fragments to those who dared confront it. Daniel lifted the journal high, saying, "Their words brought us here. We carry their truth forward." Sarah answered sharply, "Or repeating their doom." The informant's eyes narrowed, his silence splitting into a thin smile. Betrayal's shadow thickened, though Daniel failed to see. The mountains glowed faintly under northern light, casting eerie patterns on the snow. Sarah's heart thundered with dread, her instincts screaming of danger. Daniel's obsession blinded him, convinced that revelation stood just beyond the ridge. Between them, the fragile bond fractured further, pulled taut by secrets ready to break. At the ridge, the narrator described how anomalies grew stronger, compasses spinning, air humming with unseen force. Daniel said, "This is it, the threshold." Sarah clutched her coat, whispering, "It feels like we shouldn't be here." The informant's words slipped like blades, "You're already where you shouldn't be." Daniel ignored the venom, his eyes locked on the valley glowing faintly with strange light. Sarah trembled, her fears sharpening as betrayal's truth glimmered in the informant's tone. Still, Daniel pushed forward, consumed by the need for proof. The land shifted around them, shadows stretching unnaturally across snow. Each step felt like walking deeper into a realm untethered from reality. The confrontation with truth and deception, pressed closer, inevitable as the storm returning behind them. The narrator explained that revelations demand cost, and cost often arrives in betrayal. Sarah stepped closer to Daniel, hissing, "He's not guiding us, he's trapping us." Daniel snapped, "Stop letting fear blind you." The informant finally spoke, voice calm, "Truth isn't given, it's taken, and you've already paid." His words sent shivers through Sarah's chest, confirming her fears. Daniel's faith in him trembled but did not break. The forest below pulsed with faint light, as though alive. Daniel's mind twisted obsession into destiny, blind to deception clawing at his side. Sarah's heart broke under the weight of both betrayal and Daniel's blindness. The wilderness felt charged, humming with unseen energy, as if the very land prepared for their downfall. The narrator revealed how betrayal unmasked itself at the precipice of discovery. Daniel stepped forward, his voice trembling. "We stand on the edge of answers." Sarah cried, "No, we stand on the edge of ruin." The informant's smile widened, his eyes cold, as he whispered, "The truth was never yours to claim." At that moment, Daniel realized the trap, but too late. The land quaked faintly, the compass spun violently, and the forest below glowed brighter with unnatural light. Sarah pulled Daniel back, desperation flooding her voice. He resisted, torn between obsession and survival. The betrayal now burned clear. The informant was no guide but a keeper of secrets determined to bury them. The triangle itself seemed to close around them, vast and merciless, demanding their submission. The narrator described how the Alaskan triangle revealed itself only in fragments, and tonight the fragments bled into reality. Daniel stood on the ridge, his compass spinning wildly, the journal heavy in his hand. Sarah whispered, "We have to leave before it takes us too." Daniel's eyes glowed with obsession, but fear cracked his voice as he muttered, "The truth is here, Sarah. It's all around us." The informant stepped forward, his cloak whipping in the wind, and said coldly, "The truth demands a sacrifice." The land shuddered faintly, the aurora above pulsing as though alive. The narrator explained how revelation often arrived as terror. A glow spread across the valley, rising in waves of green and white, lighting the snow like fire. Daniel cried, "This is it, the source." Sarah clutched his arm, her voice breaking, "Daniel, it's not a discovery, it's a warning." The informant's voice cut through the storm, "You were never meant to survive this." Shadows moved in the light, strange shapes flickering like phantoms, pulling the forest into motion. The air vibrated as if alive, pressing against their bodies with invisible force. The narrator revealed how the triangle demanded balance, devouring those who sought too much. Daniel stepped toward the light, his voice breaking, "I can't turn away now." Sarah shouted, "If you go closer, we both die." The informant raised a hand, as if commanding the glow itself, his eyes reflecting the strange light. Betrayal turned to revelation. The keeper of secrets stood revealed. Daniel's obsession trembled under the weight of realization. Sarah's fear hardened into defiance, her voice fierce, "You won't take him from me." The storm above roared, echoing their confrontation. The narrator described how sacrifice came to define every mystery here. Daniel dropped to his knees, compass spinning violently in his palm. Sarah pulled him back, crying, "Fight it, Daniel." He whispered, "It's calling me." The informant's laughter rang hollow. "You were always meant to feed the truth." The aurora pulsed brighter, shadows stretching long and unnatural, twisting across the snow. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, her grip unyielding. In that moment, love fought against obsession, trust against betrayal, as the triangle demanded its due. The silence of centuries roared alive around them. The narrator spoke of revelation as both curse and freedom. Sarah pulled Daniel from the ridge's edge as the informant vanished into the glow, swallowed without a sound. The forest trembled, and the aurora burst across the sky, then faded into silence. Daniel collapsed, the compass dead in his palm. He whispered, "The truth was never meant for us." Sarah held him close, whispering, "Then let it remain buried." The valley fell silent again, its secrets unbroken, its hunger sated. The Alaskan triangle endured, a wound of the earth, waiting for the next soul drawn into its grasp.